Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well there back at home. My name is Kristers, and this is my sign name. So it's lovely to be here tonight. So tonight we've got a version of wee BSL Blethers, and tonight's topic for discussion is going to be around a deaf instructor. We have a wonderful guest who is a deaf instructor. Can you make yourself known? Hello there.
Hello, hi. Hello,
How are you doing?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm fine as well. Thank you so much. I just want to say I really, really appreciate you coming here tonight. Could you introduce
Oh,
yourself?
you're welcome.
Can you just tell us a bit about
sure.
yourself?
My name is Kay Hughes. And this is my sign name, like a bunch of keys.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Oh, I just have to say to the audience tonight, if you've got any comments or questions, you know the drill. Just put them in the comments, in the chat, and I'll try if we've got time to ask Kay those questions. So, Kay, could you tell us a wee bit about what a deaf instructor's role is?
Yeah, there are lots of aspects to the role of deaf instructor. You often work one-to-one with children. You might be teaching sign language to the staff. You might be teaching the pupils. And you might be teaching, hearing pupils within the school. So all of those things come into the role.
Wow, that's a lot. Do you work within the school? How does it work?
I do. I work within the school. Yeah, I work within the school. And it's a mainstream school where I work.
How long have you worked there?
Oh, altogether, I've been working within education for 31 years altogether. 31 years.
31 years?
Yes, I started at a deaf school. And I was there for about 17 years before I moved across to mainstream school, where I've been for about 14 years now. And that adds up to 31 years altogether.
Oh, fantastic. That's so amazing. But can I ask you, Kay, how did you get involved in BSL and the job in the first place?
Oh, well, it really all started with in education. My first job was working with deaf pupils, like a classroom assistant type thing. I worked there for a while, and it was only after a few years when the head teacher came up to me and said, we'd quite like you to become a deaf instructor. And I've been working with deaf pupils for 5 years, and then I've been a deaf instructor from then on. Yeah.
Wow. You must have absolute dedication. You must love this job to stay
Oh, I
31
do.
years.
I love it. I love it. And I still enjoy it. I still enjoy my work. I still love
Oh,
it.
lovely to hear that. Can I ask you, Kay, what was your first job?
Before I got into education, well, I first worked in a car company, actually, was there for 7 years,
Wow.
working there. And a real sidestep into education for the next 31 years. But 7 years in the car company before my 31 years in education. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So you went from working in a car company to a school, completely different, I suppose?
Oh, yeah, very, very different. I was the only deaf person in the car company, completely surrounded by hearing people. And then when I moved to education, I was in a deaf school before mainstream, and there was sign language everywhere. So really, really different in comparison. Obviously, I prefer working with deaf pupils. So yeah.
Oh, that's so nice to know. So when you finished the car company, you moved to deaf school and you became later on a deaf instructor?
That's right. Well, no, first of all, I was a classroom assistant for a few years,
Ah,
and then I became the deaf instructor. Yeah.
right.
So I was
Okay.
a classroom assistant initially. I mean, it's still within education, obviously, but then my role changed to the role of deaf
Got you.
instructor.
So suppose within education, you've had the two roles, classroom assistant and then a deaf instructor, yeah?
And I prefer the deaf instructor role just because of the variety that's involved in it.
So do you just teach deaf pupils or just
I
or
know.
do you teach hearing as well?
Hearing and deaf, but I have to say, when I'm teaching deaf pupils, Sometimes I'm doing one-to-ones, sometimes I'm doing a group. And I teach hearing staff and hearing pupils as well, all in sign language. So it's quite a broad range.
That's so amazing. So let's go back. So you're there as a deaf instructor all of these years, and what is the kind of the priorities?
Well, I think the most important thing is the teaching of sign language for the purposes of communication. And I believe really strongly in that. I believe teaching children, I remember when I was at school, and remember I worked at deaf school first before I moved to a mainstream school. The difference between those two environments was huge. Within a deaf school, everybody signed. And when I moved across to mainstream, some of the pupils there were oral. So that was a very different experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started working in mainstream, it really hit me actually, because there were just so many people within the school environment. There was a deaf unit within that. And at the time it was strongly oral. Lots of the parents wanted their children to learn to sign. So that's how I started teaching sign. And really that's a sort of, I can come back to some funny stories from that later if you like. But yeah, it was an experience.
Oh, can you tell us some? That would be great. Perfect.
Oh,
time.
you want some of the anecdotes now? Right. Okay. So some of the pupils in mainstream were oral. And they came to my classroom for the first time. And I remember that, they couldn't, they'd had no exposure to sign at all. And I'm there signing away. And it was their parents who'd wanted the pupils to learn to sign. The pupils weren't particularly happy. And I said, why aren't you happy? And they said, well, I like speaking. I don't like signing. And that, I said, okay, let me just teach you. Let's try, 6 months or maybe a year. And I bet you'll be signing by the end of it. It'll come slowly at first, but in 5 years' time, you'll be fluent signers. And they looked at me like they didn't believe it. And then, we started teaching and gradually they began to learn and obviously they improved and they all became fluent signers. And it was just amazing to see. And they're still signing now.
Wow.
Still signing now. And in fact, pupils from other mainstream schools would come to our school. They couldn't communicate and I'd spend time with them one-to-one. I'd encourage them, I'd teach them. And it was lovely to see their confidence grow as they learnt to sign and as they learnt to enjoy it. And that made me really proud to see their development, to see them begin to communicate and to communicate with their hearing peers as well. And that felt like, I don't know how to say it. It felt like a real achievement on their behalf, to watch them develop and to grow into sign language. And now you see signing spreading more and more and more and more people communicating. And I think it's vital that more and more school children have sign language as their communication tool.
Well, you're absolutely right. Any extra communication method can only help people. And we know sign language we can do all over the world.
Yeah, it's interesting, when I was teaching for that first 5 years and people left school, and I'd say to them, do you like did you like the signing? They would say, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's really part of me. I love doing sign language at school. And, a lot of them, even though they've left school, they still now love signing. And you get a new batch in and you teach them and then a new batch in and you teach them.
Wow.
And the enjoyment just goes on. I just love teaching children, pupils.
So I suppose for you, Kay, you get to watch that person grow and develop into who they really are. It must be wonderful.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
And I remember, when my first school closed and I moved, a lot of my students who were really deaf, and then moving into a mainstream environment where there are lots of really oral pupils, it felt really different. And then after those oral pupils had learnt sign, they were friends with my previous pupils, and then they were all signing together. And that's just beautiful to see that development and to really encourage and support that. It's been fantastic. And it's lovely to see them signing, when they leave school, they can communicate fluently with other people, and that's just great.
Absolutely. So what qualifications do you need to become a deaf instructor?
Oh, I have so many qualifications. I have qualifications about children, about communication, about so many things. I think I've got 8 different kinds of communication qualification, but they're all about working with children, mostly through the SQA, Scottish Qualifications Authority.
So if we've got young people at home watching us tonight, what do they do? How do they become an instructor?
Oh, well, I would say to young people now, whether they're hearing or deaf, get involved, get your SQA examinations around communication.
And I suppose once you do that, you could become a deaf instructor.
I would love to see, I hope so. I would love to pass the baton on to the next generation. I'd love to see more and more deaf instructors in the future. That would be a real pleasure for me to see, the ranks of our profession grow.
Yeah, I would like that too. And also with that progression, there's awareness too.
Yeah, I mean, from 20 years ago to now, Kristers, the change is just incredible. There are so many more people learning sign language, regardless of whether they're deaf or hearing. Um, I teach them all the same, and I think it's much better now. There's more access, there's more communication. It's great.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I see more access. We have some comments in, Kate. I'm just going to
All
have a
right,
quick
okay.
look at the comments and see if there's any questions. There's a comment in from Linda Richards. And Linda's asking, you can see the question down at the bottom of the screen, but I'll sign it too. Are the children who wanted to stay oral now pleased that they have sign language? And what do they prefer?
Oh, they're signers. They're signers. I mean, they might use their oral skills as well, but they love signing. So I think they prefer being bilingual. I think they prefer both. And they're still learning. A lot of them are still learning that, pursuing their sign language studies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to keep anything up your sleeve for any aspect in life.
Yeah, and sometimes, for example, there's some lovely things like, if I've got hearing pupils learning to sign, sometimes, somebody will come pop through the door and say something, speak something into the classroom, and I can't hear what they're saying. One of the students will say, "Oh, he said such and such," and they'll sign it to me, and I think that's lovely to see that amongst young people learning about access and about communication. And at the same time, the person who's opened the door and spoken into the classroom can see that interaction. They said, this being signed back to me as a teacher. I think it's great.
Oh, I think that's fabulous. And it's so important to have that, exposure to sign language and using it every day. So that's brilliant. What lovely stories, Kay. Thank you. If you were to if we were to say we had a magic wand and you had a dream for the future, what's your future? What does it look like?
Oh, I would love in the future to see more deaf instructors. I would love that. Um, and I'm hoping that the children I've taught will themselves go on to teach other children who would then teach others. And, that flow, that development, I'd love to see.
Why would you like that? Why do you think that would be important if it's your students that teach other students or other pupils?
Sorry, you froze a bit there. Could you just repeat that, Kristers?
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. So what kind of impact do you think if sign language is rolling out everywhere?
Oh, just the spread of it, for deaf people, just to see more sign and sign language being learned and more communication happening in that way. I'd love that to spread, even wider.
I'm thinking about when you started your job as an deaf instructor. Uh, what kind of learning did you take place? What was the new things?
How did I learn that? Well, when I was working at the deaf school before I transferred to mainstream school, as I said before, they're very different environments, very different. In the mainstream school, I treat deaf and hearing pupils just the same. So it's really important to include hearing people as sign language learners as well. And I'd love to see more of that, really, more opening doors to staff, to students, to everyone to learn sign language within that environment. I'd love to see that.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? You know, that's what we're all looking for, Kim. It's so great that within education, if we can just share the joy of sign language and watch deaf people improve their own skills as well.
Yeah. And at deaf school, I taught from nursery through to secondary, so I could watch someone's development. In mainstream school, I get less opportunity for that because it's just a high school. So it's just S1 to S6. But I do see that progression with the children as I'm teaching them. But I'd love more of them to become deaf instructors. I'm teaching a lot of pupils at the moment, and some of them I think may go on to become deaf instructors in the future. I'd like to see more of that. Communication, that's what it is. It's so vital.
We have another question coming in, and it's from Linda Richards. Oh, it's actually a question for myself. Okay, so Linda's asking me if I've got any memories of having UK teaching me, if there's any funny stories.
Oh, well, there's one thing I remember. When the signing kids and the oral kids came together, at first they were very, very different. You know, they were a group of deaf children who transferred into that mainstream environment from my old school. And I remember when those kids arrived and they looked at me, and some of the oral kids looked at me and kind of went, you know, I don't want to learn sign. And I would just say, well, okay, your parents want you to learn sign. And they'd be like, nope, 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 nope. I don't want to sign. I don't want to sign. I want to speak. Speech is good. And I said, okay, but you can have both. You don't have to be just oral or just signing. You can use both. It'll make you happy. You know, your parents have said, you've got to have this time with me, so we might as well spend it learning sign. And then at the end of it, you know, the pupils love signing. You know, I'm really enjoying this. Thank you for teaching me. It's been wonderful. I didn't know I wanted to learn to sign. So you can have both. And I think that's important, that message, that you can have both. And that's a funny part, you know, and maybe the same for you, Kristers, that a lot of the children come along and at first they don't want to come. They sit there scowling, you know, they're there because their parents have sent them. But when they leave at the end of the course, when they go off to college, to university, whatever, they're very happy they've done it.
Oh, thanks, Kay. That's great. But I'm going to go back to Linda's question, and she'd asked, do I have any memories of a funny story of you yourself teaching me when I was at school? And I do remember, I can remember quite vividly coming to school and meeting you for the first time, and I was so nervous. And you were like, oh, you're okay, you'll be fine, you'll love it, you'll mix with all the pupils. And you were so encouraging and you were so flexible. And for me, having this deaf teacher there was so good for me. It was surprising, but really good for me. And I loved it, Kate. And, you know, and I remember I was a bit kind of like, I'm trying to think about if there was a funny story. Oh, you go, Kay, you tell us something.
I mean, every year we get new students in, maybe at S2 or S3 joining late, you know, they've been at some other mainstream school, it hasn't worked, so they come along to our school. And they're often really sad, you know, and I spend a little time with them one-to-one, and we start kind of playing some games and just writing messages to each other. And then I begin to teach and their behavior changes. And eventually you get eye contact because they've been avoiding your gaze up to then. And then eventually they start to sign and they sign and they sign. And then they end up, you know, mischievous kids getting told off in a normal way. And some of them, you know, go from 0 to 60 with that sign language, you know, from absolutely having no facial expression, being almost locked in, to being really kind of wonderful, out there, expressive, naughty. It's great. And I love that. And lots of kids come back and say, I love being able to sign, you know?
And it's so good having that rapport, that connection. You need that.
I think it's really important. I think it is important to make a connection with the children. And you have to support, you have to encourage them to help them to take off really and into the future.
Well, Kate, you won't be surprised. There's a lot of comments coming in. We have another question coming in from Marissa. And her question is, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, what is your ambition for teachers in deaf schools? What would you see? What would be your ambition? How would you improve things as they currently stand?
You mean for me personally? A personal ambition?
Well, I think what you would see in the environment, what would you like within school?
Oh, within schools, I was going to say go to college, but the ambition of school. Well, I think. I mean, I want to encourage children to be ambitious for their future, and I want to see that happening in schools. And if you are ambitious, just push through that. Make sure that you achieve your goals. Work towards them. Go for it.
Thank you, Kay. Do you have any like maybe some sort of thoughts or feelings that when you maybe think about the old school or maybe even your first job, even let's go do that for your first job to now, is it anything that you can look at yourself and say there's been a change, or maybe you've had some sort of self-reflection and development, or maybe hidden skills that have come out? Do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say, what's the difference between you, old Kate, and new Kate?
In terms of my skills, I still have ambition. I still want to carry on. I don't want to give up. I'm still in it. So I want to carry on doing what I'm doing. I still want to be teaching. Yeah, more pupils. That's what I want, to carry on teaching. And I want those pupils themselves to then begin teaching others and to follow their own ambitions and to achieve their goals. So I want the same for them as I want for me, really.
So, I mean, like, you think your first job in sort of Arnold Clark, and now there you're up in the school. So, do you think your motivation's better?
Oh yeah, there's more signing, more communication. It's completely different. Yeah, it's much better.
Could also, Kay, do you have deaf role models within the school?
A
Are
role
you
model
one?
for me? No, I don't think I look up for my role models. I look down. I want to provide a role model for the pupils, and in a way, they're a role model for me. I did teach one child called Demi.
Mm-hmm.
And who started at school when they were 2.5. They were brought into school, and I just looked at this wee kid, and I thought, this one's got a bright future.
Hang on. I want to show a picture of Demi.
Oh, okay. So, as I say, from that photograph was when Demi was 2.5, and I was a classroom assistant that time. And I was with Demi from when she was 2.5 to 17. Wow. When they left school.
Can I show another photograph?
Okay, so at the time of that photo was when Demi was leaving school, about 17.5 years old. So from the age of 2.5 to the age of 17.5, I had been with her the whole way through, teaching, encouraging, supporting. She progressed incredibly. And when she left school, 5 years later, Demi came back to the mainstream school where I was then working, and we became colleagues.
Wow.
25 years after we first met. Yeah.
Wow. And we have a photograph, I think, to show that. So the photographs recreating the original one? Wow. It's lovely to see at 2.5 playing with your hair and now come back as your colleague playing with your hair, and that relationship being there is amazing.
I have so enjoyed watching that child develop from 2.5 years old to 19-year-old adult. And now being my colleague in a mainstream school, we work together. We're still the same. You know, I'm teaching, she's now teaching, and I feel like I've passed the mantle on to Demi, and that Demi will now carry that mantle and pass it on to, you know, her own pupils. And I think that's really important.
Oh, that's just amazing to hear that. It's just so extraordinary and so beautiful as well. It's just so nice to hear, about
I,
someone's journey like that.
you know, I've had other deaf pupils as well. There's no favoritism here. I love them all equally. I love working with all of them. I love teaching each and every one of them and watching each and every one of them develop, grow in confidence, become fluent. I love to see that. Especially when they come into mainstream and they're, you know, I'm working with them one-to-one to begin with, and then they just flourish. And it's lovely. It's a wonderful thing. I enjoy it so much.
We have some questions in the comments again, and it's from Linda Richards. And the question is, Kay, in total, how many children do you think you have taught altogether? Can you hazard a guess?
Altogether in total?
Yeah.
Well, you know, all of them. 41? I think about 41 altogether. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wait a minute. Are you talking you've been teaching for 31 years?
No. So when I started work at the deaf school, and then I moved to mainstream school, the number of pupils I've taught so far, I would say altogether would be, I see the question now. At 300-400, I don't know. I mean, I've been teaching for nearly 40 years. I don't know. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
But I still enjoy it. So, you know.
Oh, thanks, Kay. Would you believe that our time is nearly up? So I suppose my final question is if you get any tips or advice to any young people who are watching at home?
I would love to encourage them, go to school, go to classroom, go to university, go to college, and you know, work with communication, because it is a lovely area to work in. And teaching, I think, is lovely, and I'd love to see your viewers going out teaching more people to sign. That would be a great thing.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you for that advice. I so appreciate your time. We all
You're
do.
very welcome.
And that's us for this evening. But I just want to say thank you to our viewers.
You're very welcome, and I hope everyone's enjoyed watching.
Thank you.